welcome to CSL Denver, a place, a space, and a face of love. A spiritual community utilizing ancient principles and applying universal wisdom to empower our lives and the lives of others. I am so glad that you're here today, and the technology gods have been very kind to me this morning. So I just want to pre-apologize for any technical difficulties that you might be experiencing, although I think you are in good stead. So today, the topic that we have is individualizing the infinite. Individualizing the infinite. Now, one of the first things someone might ask if you're talking about the infinite is the obvious question, well, what is the infinite? If it's infinite, how do you know it? How can you conceive of it? And probably most important, where did it come from? Right? And so when we think about this in mystical terms, we look at the infinite as being a non-specific principle or being that gave rise to the universe, that has no personality, so to speak, no likes or dislikes. It is what it is, right? And when we begin to look at what life is and how we navigate, the first thing we want to do is figure out how we begin to individualize this power, this concept. Now, we know from in nature, everything is individualized. Even if you have two bees, they're not the same bee. If you have two flowers, they're not the same flowers. And so what we want to do is, when we look at this first slide here that speaks to our idea by Aurobindo, that says the infinite is not the sum of things, it is that which is the thing itself and more. It's not the sum of things, and the thing itself is more. Now, mathematically, if we were looking at that, the perfect mathematical number or term, depends on how you want to look at it, is pi, right? 3.14. Now, that's the shorthand, because we know if we keep operating with the pi, it keeps going on and on and on and never repeats itself. And so I guess you might say, well, what does pi have to do with infinity and me individualizing it? Well, the thing about pi is used in math and physics and other scientific operations, if you will, but it looks at the circumference of a thing. It's looking at the wholeness of a thing. And so when we look at pi, it's trying to get a grasp for the infinite. Where are the boundaries? Where is the center? And so we say in this teaching that a circle is where the circumference is everywhere, but there's nowhere that it ends. It just keeps going on and on and on. And so when that happens, we begin to look at a possibility that is truly infinite. Now, to individualize that, one of the best metaphors, if you will, to highlight that is the ocean. And we can use two different analogies to highlight that point. First, the ocean is infinite, and the wave is the individual expression of a moment in time. Because once that wave leaves, there's never another wave exactly like that. And that's what each and every one of us are. We are a wave of infinite possibilities that happen in a moment in time and then moves on. Another way to look at it is the fish within the ocean. The fish is there, and when it is attuned, and it's almost never out of tune once it's in the ocean, it only becomes unattuned when you take it out of the ocean and it's gasping, but it attunes itself to the divine, to the infinite. And there's no separation between the two. We begin to live in that manner when we attune ourselves to infinite possibilities, to look at things the way they could be, not the way they are. Not even the way they should be, because with infinite possibilities, anything is possible. Anything is possible. So when we begin to look at our authentic selves, when we begin to try to individualize all there is, the first thing that we should not do, which often happens when we start talking spiritual, is try to get rid of your ego. Because your ego is actually that individualization of the divine. Without that, you would be non-existent. No one would know who you are. You wouldn't have any special characters that make you unique. And that's what we are all here for, to be unique individual expressions of the divine, or else there would only be just one expression, one person. One person out, better yet, a robot. And that's not what we're here for. So the first thing that we have to do to step into this idea of individualizing the infinite is become aware. And how do you do that? You listen, you watch, you observe, you do all these things that allow you to tap into an energy, to a presence, to a knowledge that is always there, that is always present. And there's no way to not be aware if you jump in a pool of water. If you jump in a pool of water, you will become very aware that I'm in a different element, I need to do different things, and if I don't attune myself to my environment, some other things are going to happen. We're going to need to call some people. They're going to have to do all kind of pressures on my chest. We're going to have a real big situation going on. And that's what's really happening to each one of us when we are not in tune with the divine. When we are not trying to individualize this information, we become a fish out of water, so to speak. And if you've ever seen a fish out of water, it is not happy. I just caught some last week with my grandkids, and them fish were not, my grandkids were very happy. Them fish were not happy. And so just think about that for yourself. Are you feeling out of tune with reality? Because what we find ourselves in, all the good and all the bad and everything in between, is the ocean of infinite possibilities. That's what it looks like. There's no guarantee that the infinite possibility is going to be something that we like. It may be something that we actually dislike. But because it's coming from an infinite ocean, an ocean that has no preference, no personal judgment, we become conduits for how we interpret that. How we, live within that space, if you will. And so this is how we begin to individualize the infinite. You can have two people standing in the rain, and one person will be just irate, and the other person will find a aha moment and just relax in the rain, in its warmth, in its sound, in its pitter-patter on the body. Same rain, two different acknowledgments, two different ways of looking at it, two different ways of individualizing the infinite. So the question, how willing, ready, and able are each and every one of us to do just that, to individualize the infinite, to individualize the infinite. Now, when we step back and begin to do that, there are three things I want to share that I think kind of capsulize and kind of push us forward in what we need to do. The first thing is we need to get in tune. We have to get in tune with what is being said, what is being done, in, through, and around us. And the only way that I know that is effective and always works is to be still and know. To be still and know. Find that vision. Find that way of tapping in. You know, you will hear metaphysicians talk about this example all the time, because in this room, in your house, if you're watching online, there is an energy, there is a frequency that is always present. And if you have the right instrument tuned to the right frequency, i.e. a radio or television or computer, if it's tuned to the right frequency, it will pick up the essence of all there is. But there's a vision that goes with that. If I want to listen to 98.3, I have to have a vision that there is a such thing as a 98.3. And then I have to fine tune myself to get to it. And I do that by visioning, by going inside, by being still of what it is that I'm looking for. And inevitably, when you speak about individualization, in that process, this whole idea of self-discovery takes place. Because now you begin to realize what that individualization looks like. Are you still enough to know when you're irritated, when you get mad, when you're in fear? Because this is when we are not in tune with the infinite. Not that something might be unpleasant or something might even be fearful, but that is not us. That is the way we are looking at the infinite possibilities and have locked in, created a vision of what it means to be in the house in the dark, or to be in the water with no visible lifeguard around if you're not able to swim. So how do we begin to do that? We be still, we listen, we look, and we begin to feel into a situation. We begin to feel into. How do you do that? Once again, by being still. If we were to take a moment of silence right now, most of us felt either some heat or our heart beating or our pulse going. That's how we get in tune. That's how we get in tune. And now once we're in tune, the next thing that we have to do is to know who you are. We said we had to have self-reflection. Another way of saying that, if we put it in a symphonic context, is you have to know your key. What is your personal key? If the symphony is playing in C and you playing in C sharp, you're close, but you're not quite there. If you know anything about music, those two can coexist, but they can't jive together for very long. It'll create havoc. And it's like, but when you think about it, and jazz is the perfect idea of this. Jazz is an improvisational venue. You get a group of people together with a vision that has been still enough and know themselves enough of what they're doing with their instrument. And in jazz, they set a key, especially if it's improv, they set a key. The drummer and the piano sets a rhythm and a foundation, the infinite, and then the musicians just pour in. They play together for a while, then somebody goes off on a tangent and a solo, and they come back. And so each one of these is an example of the individual being individualized in this foundation of rhythm. Simple jazz music, if you will. Perfect example of individualizing the infinite. You have a set of musicians that intersect at some points, and then they have the freedom to go out and do their own thing in a solo. And when they feel, okay, I've soloed enough, I can get back in here and be in tune with everything. That's what we're trying to do when we live an authentic life. Imagine going to a concert and everybody's playing the same thing. And if you've ever been to a concert where they're tuning up, that's probably what it'll sound like. Just, oh my God, just noise everywhere. Might be some pretty noise, but it's noise nonetheless because there's no harmony. There's no oneness. They're not putting the infinite things together. Now, to do this, to take that solo, you got to be courageous. Are you courageous enough to be the individualization of the divine? That means you're going to stand out front and the spotlight's going to be on you. You can't hesitate. You can't wait. When the spotlight hits you, you got to play. Are you in tune enough to play? Have you been aware of your instrument, that you're in key and you're ready to examine and explore the possibilities? That's what we're trying to do when we individualize the infinite. When we individualize the infinite. And one of the things that I think that's not talked about that often in this is we have to challenge the status quo if you're going to individualize the infinite. Because most people, and I might be stepping on some toes, maybe my own when I say most people, we want to fall in line. We want to be acceptable. We want to be fitting in with everybody else. But when we look at all those individuals that have made an important, lasting contribution to society, almost to a person, they were a minority of one. If you look at Jesus, he was one minority shouting in the wilderness, if you will. But he was in tune with the infinite, and he said, I am going to personify this energy. If you look at Buddha, you look at Mahatma Gandhi, you look at Martin Luther King, you look at Muhammad, any of these, any idea I would submit that has been lasting and innovating, they were a minority of one, and they did not stay with the status quo. They challenged it. They challenged it. And as a result of that, we know about Jesus however many thousand years ago. We know about Muhammad, same thing. We know about Buddha, the same thing. We know about Confucius, the same thing. Are we going to follow in those footsteps? Not that we might be rabble rousers. I don't know. They call it that sometime when you go in New Thought, that we're challenging the status quo. But that's okay. If that's what it takes for you to get in tune with all that we are, all that you are, then do it. Because we know that there's a power greater than us and we can use it. And that there is an intelligence that surrounds us that will allow us to make the right move at the right time with the right people, if you will. Now, once we've done that, once we got in tune, we got a vision, and we know the key we're playing, we got a vision. I always say the hard point for last, and that's practice, practice, practice. You have to practice being you. That sounds silly maybe, but you have to practice being you. Because if you don't, now this may sound weird, somebody else may try to take your place. How many facsimiles of yourself do you think are out there? Or, even worse, how many of us are trying to be facsimiles of somebody else? Right? If we stick with that same musician motif of jazz, a great musician will tell you, don't be like me, be you. And to do that, you got to practice. Now, you may start with my improvisational skills or with my foundational way of looking at the music, but ultimately, you got to put your own stamp on it. Because I used to play sax, and I'm going to leave that alone. But I most definitely was no John Coltrane. I was definitely not my homeboy, Cannonball Adderley. But I did play the sax, and like I said, I'm going to just leave it at that. I did not individualize that instrument. But that's what we have to do. We start with the infinite, all there is, and then we put our own stamp on it. We put our own authentication on it. And that takes practice. I may start with Coltrane, and then I may mix in a little Sonny Stitt, and eventually I'm a new musician. Excuse me. And to practice means I have to stay open to the possibilities. I have to stay open to the possibilities that maybe one day I could be as great or greater than some famous musician or some famous artist or writer or lawyer. Pick a venue. It doesn't matter. But when we do this, we step outside of our limited thinking, our fears, because we don't really believe in the infinite. We think there is a lack. We think there is a shortage. We think there's something missing, that Coltrane had something that I didn't. Well, he did. He practiced. I didn't. I'm just going to be honest. He practiced more than I did. If I'd have kept practicing, I had a chance, because all the possibilities were right there. So practice. And the last thing about this practice approach, you have to let go of attachments. Yeah, I was attached to Coltrane. I was attached to Coltrane. I was attached to Charlie Parker. I was attached to Cannonball Adderley, all these Sonny Stitt, all these great saxophonists. But that was the problem. I was attached to them. I wasn't attached to me. I was trying to play like them as opposed to playing like me. So I had to let go of those attachments. I wasn't as successful with that as some other things, so I don't play saxophone anymore. Nor clarinet. I play both, and I don't play either one anymore. And that's because I didn't individualize the infinite through me, through those horns. So the question is, are you individualizing yourself? Have you taken your instrument called you and fine-tuned it and come up with a vision and set still enough to know what key you should be playing in? That's the question. Now, when you can really figure that out, there's that song, Ain't No Stopping Us Now, We're on the Move. That's what will happen when you're able to do that. When you're able to do that. And now, there is this idea of how do we begin to use this in practical life, in everyday life. And as I said, the technology gods are really, I'm not in tune with something this morning. I'm just going to say that way, because my technology is lacking, but my vision is not. My practice is not. And so with that, as always, we have this call to action that we want to bring forth that says this. The first one is, what can you do this week to understand your individual expression of the divine better? What can you do this week alone, that will make you more in tune with the infinite, that will allow you to see more possibilities? Because when you can sit still and do that, now you got options. Now you got a chance to practice. Now you got a chance to test it. That's the first thing. The second thing is this. You got to find your peeps. You got to find your band. You got to find your crew to practice with. You can solo, but for so long, and then you're going to get burnt out. So you got to find your band. You got to find your peeps to get together to help you utilize and actualize these individual infinite possibilities that await us all. When we do that, it's like coming home. And I'm sure a lot of us, if not most of us, and in fact, if not all of us, when you're around a group of people or you're in a certain setting, you know when you find your peeps. You know that. Things flow easily and effortlessly. You can have misunderstanding but not be misunderstood. You can move from one level to another level, and if you slip and fall, your people might just hold you right there till you get your balance again. That's what we're looking to do when we individualize the infinite, because we will attract to us, we will draw to us everything we need, because everything is infinite. Everything is infinite. And so when we allow this to happen, we become individualizations of God. And so to anchor that in, we have this affirmation that I'm going to read. I am the architect of my life. Individual with person and with purpose and grace. And there is nothing or no part that I cannot access. And I kind of ad-libbed there because I told y'all my technology is not taking this morning. But if you're watching online, you'll see that screen. You'll see that affirmation, because we have to be the individualization of the divine each and every day in every way. And so with that, let's go into prayer. As we take this moment called now, that no matter what it looks like, no matter how it unfolds, it is always perfect. It is always available to display the infinite possibilities of the divine. And because we know that we are that expression, we are that wave, we are that fish that is in tune with all that there is, we accept each moment knowing that we are in an ever-changing process of individualization. As we more insight, as we get more in tune, as we find more people who act like, think like, and vision like we do, we get stronger. We have a better permission to be who we are. And we support those who support us. We don't think in lack. We don't think in not being able to do something. We think in infinite possibilities. And so I know right here, right now, for myself and everyone here and anyone that might be listening later, that we are opening up to the idea of being authentic, to being a true individual expression of the divine, that allows us to move beyond any barriers, any obstacles. We're choosing here, right now, to be non-standard, if you will. Not to go where the crowd may go, but go where there's no crowd and be an individual drum major in life. And so as we do this, we know we are blessed, we are guided, we are supported by an infinite idea, by an infinite intelligence, by infinite love that will lead us to greater and greater yet to be's. And so it is because of that idea, it's because of that understanding that I give thanks. I give thanks that I know that the more I practice, the better I get. The clearer my vision, the closer I get to it. And when I can sing in the key of life, there is nothing that will keep me from succeeding. And because I know this is true for me, I also know it's true for you and for everyone on this planet. So with that, I release, I let go. I know that this word, this prayer, this affirmation of life is bound to meet an expectation beyond anything we can receive. And with that, we just say, so it is, Amen, amen, and amen.